Good afternoon and welcome to the Living Well program. You can find us here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. on KATV 89.3 in Anchorage as well as KJLP 88.9 on Palmer. You can also catch us online at katv.org. We have got another full house this week. We've got a crowded studio here and so excited to mention to you who we've got and the program that we're going to be bringing today. We have got Gwen Adams, Executive Director with Priceless, as well as Stephanie, Director of Survivor Care, and Donna is here with us as well, who's the Program Director for Priceless. Thank you so much for being willing to come back to just expand on the information that we can provide to our listening audience. Again, we had this a similar program last week, but just couldn't quite fit it all in. So let's see what other information we can capture out of this week. Why don't we start with Stephanie? You tell us a little bit about, somebody's got to be asking the question out there. Is sex trafficking really taking place here in Alaska?
Yes, it absolutely is. The process that sex trafficking kind of takes here in Alaska is recruitment is the first step. Traffickers are looking for vulnerable children, teenagers, adults. They're looking for children who are homeless. Maybe they hang out a lot at the transit center, the Diamond Mall, the airport even. We see whenever there's large functions and events, get-togethers, then trafficking kind of spikes. We've seen traffickers hanging out at the airports, especially the small airlines where people from the villages are coming in. It's sad to say, but young women from the villages are the most marketable here, and that's because they can market them as exotic races. A lot of the girls coming from the villages don't have a lot of support here in Anchorage. They're here for a medical appointment or AFYN, those kind of events, and they are recruited and groomed is the next part of this kind of process. A trafficker will recruit a young lady and then groom her. That means telling her how attractive she is, how beautiful she is, giving her gifts, getting her nails done, bringing her to get her hair done, really luring her in. That's where he will tell her that I want to be your boyfriend, I want to take care of you. And then the last process is the breaking in process. That's where physical assault starts happening. Maybe they say, I've got you all of this stuff, you owe me this one thing, or I can't pay the rent this month, but I have a friend, and if you just sleep with him this one time, he's going to help us cover the rent, and start breaking them into that process. In Alaska, trafficking is really heavily internet-based. We see a lot of women for sale on websites like Backpage.com. There's a lot of massage parlors in town that are a front for human trafficking, so it's absolutely happening here.
So I want to back up a little bit. Do you know, and I'm sure you guys do, but what does that initial engagement look like when the trafficker initially approaches a prospect or a young girl?
It can look like anything, a girl at the coffee shop and he buys her cup of coffee, or a woman sitting on a bench and she's waiting for a bus and has nothing with her, looks broken down and exhausted, so he comes and sits by her and pays for her bus fare, or offers her a ride and says, where are you going? Let me get you there. You look like you need help. With our teenagers, it may be, hey, we're having a fun party, get together at my house, and why don't you come and hang out with all of us and have a good time and get your mind off of whatever's going on at home. The engagement, it
varies.
It really varies.
So I've heard that a lot of times they'll approach them, and this might be just old information or completely a myth, so correct me, but that they'll approach them with like modeling opportunities and things
Absolutely.
of that nature. Is that still a tactic?
Yep. Amateur photographers will lure them into, be a model for me. Oh my gosh, you are so beautiful. Have you ever thought about modeling? The music industry is another one as well, wanting to be a rock star or a hip hop artist. They look at those talents, and a lot of these girls, they are beaten down. They're from homes that are broken. 80 to 90% of victims of trafficking have a history of child sexual abuse. So they will ask them about their dreams and then offer the world to them, and they're going to make a difference in their lives and make those dreams come true.
As a parent, are there things that we can do to protect our children, or is that even a concern?
Absolutely. It's a major concern. We have really seen the commercial sex industry and sex trafficking really evolve. We have recently come into contact with a young girl. She's a teenager who actually never even met her trafficker face to face. Social media is playing such a huge role in this industry. He contacted her via a social media website, started being charismatic and having conversations with her, convinced her to start sending him pictures of herself. And those pictures escalated, and he got some nude photos of her, and then he used those against her, emotionally blackmailed her, said, if you don't go to this hotel and meet this friend of mine, then these pictures are going to be all over the media. Your family's going to see who you are. We'll start breaking her down, calling her these names. So she never even met him. So really, as parents, if your children have social media, know the passwords to those, be involved with them, know who their friends on their social media websites are, monitor their internet activity. If they're going and hanging out at the mall, have a time that they need to be back, or check in with them periodically, teaching them the basic stranger danger, not engaging with men that you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
On your guys' website, you define your mission and vision in part by stating that Priceless provides real help and access to a different way of life for women caught in the trade. Tell us a little bit what is meant by using that word caught, because I think that's a key component to some of what you just shared as well.
Well, for being caught, we mean no child or woman or teenager goes to bed at night dreaming about the day that they're going to wake up and become prostituted. It's not their life plan. It's not their 5-year plan. It's not their career goal. When I graduate high school, this is what I want to do. They get caught up in it. They get tricked into it and lured into it. It's not something that they plan to do. So that's what we kind of mean by the word caught. Gwen, do you have anything to add?
No, and when you're a girl, for instance, growing up in Bethel, Alaska, and you dream of the day, as probably most teenagers do, of the day you get to get out and go to the big city, right? And all of a sudden this good-looking guy comes up, and he's got a nice car, and he thinks you're amazing, and showers you with gifts. It's not a fair game. And I think one of the things that we see with prostitution, and that it's been called the victimless crime for so long, but it's not a victimless crime. There's a definite systematic breaking to these women. Even a lot of the traffickers are from out of state. They come here knowing that Alaska's statistics are so high with girls who've experienced childhood sexual abuse, or we're considered rape capital of the nation. So that makes Alaska very, very profitable for outside traffickers to come and get these girls. And if you come to the big city, you're a plane ticket, which equals money away from your support system back in one of the villages, and you're just a sitting duck. So being caught, they get caught up in that, but it's not long before the beatings start to happen, and coercion, threats. And one of the ways that traffickers quite often keep a girl is I have 2 gals that we've worked with who are actually pinned down and forced to become heroin addicted. Right. So before too long, they're not even getting money for what they do. They're actually just getting hits.
So speaking of getting caught and just using some of that information that you shared, both Betty and I work in young girls ministry. What are some red flags that we could look for in girls that might be in these situations?
Are you talking about like identifying a young girl who maybe getting caught up in that?
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of things that we see is maybe their IDs go missing. Traffickers will take their IDs, especially if they're women from the villages. They can't get on an airplane back home. If they have a phone that is ringing all the time, or they are very anxious or paranoid about answering that phone in time, usually that's him texting or calling, "Where are you? You need to be here at this time." So that phone is really kind of it's anxious for them if they can't get to it quick enough. Sudden shopping trips. I worked with a girl who was homeless, had no money. She went out, came back, and she had her hair all done. Her makeup was beautiful, had new clothes. Her nails were done. That she can't afford that. Where did that come from? So an influx of material goods that, that maybe they can't afford. That's a red flag. Men hanging around, or a mention of a boyfriend. Usually this boyfriend is much older. Or the term daddy. A lot of traffickers will force women to call them daddy. So those are some red flag words. If you're hearing words like going on dates or turning tricks. If you hear some of that lingo, that's what they call meeting with a customer, or a John. If you hear that, my John the other night did this, or that's a term to listen out for.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's really helpful. Gives us some practical ways to be looking for that. Betty, what do you have?
Well, I wanted to ask Gwen, I know that you participated in the executive sleep out a few months ago, and I heard you speak about what an impact that made on you as far as not having a warm bed to sleep in, and you were so cold, and you would have loved to have had more blankets. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
So Covenant House does the executive sleep out once a year, and various executives, and in fact, Governor Walker and his wife slept outside with us too. They build a city of cardboard houses, and we get to sleep out there all night. And of course, it's the winter, and those that know me, this is kind of funny because I'm not like the biggest camping fan on the planet. So camping in the winter on the ground would be difficult. And as I lay there during the night, I was really cold. I had worn all the warm clothes that I can. The mat that I had popped during the night, so I was essentially sleeping on the cement. The wind had blown a layer of snow into my shelter and melted, so I was wet and cold, and I laid there half the night thinking about this, thinking, if I was a teenager and had no place to go, you can see how someone coming along offering a bed and warmth in exchange for sex, you can see how easy that would happen. And if you factor in the fact that, as Stephanie mentioned, 80 to 90% of our victims have had a decent amount of sexual trauma and sexual abuse in their past, and if something's been stolen from you by force, and now somebody wants to take that same thing but offer you money and a bed, it's a very short distance to go from being homeless to being trafficked. One of the things that was so impacting about the sleep out is realizing that 40% of the foster kids in Alaska who age out of the system, in other words, they go through the, however many houses, they age out of the system without ever getting adopted, end up homeless. And of the homeless, aged out foster kids, 100% of them are approached for trafficking. Not all of them end up getting into it, but that is one of the most vulnerable populations we have. And we took a bus around town to all the different teenage homeless camps that Covenant House led us on a tour of all these. Actually, Covenant House in conjunction with the FBI, of where trafficking is happening in these homeless camps. And so quite often you'll find a homeless camp, and then just outside of it, a few hundred yards away is a youth homeless camp. They kind of segregate to themselves, because it's super dangerous. And traffickers know where these camps are. They bring food to the camp. They offer all kinds of ways out of those camps. And so that is a very vulnerable it really made me want to go just adopt, a couple hundred kids.
Yeah.
On your website, by the way, I just love your guys' website. It's, so much more than just providing the functionality of the organization. You guys have done such a great job at conveying your heart behind the ministry by sharing some stories best you can about things that you guys have seen through the ministry. But on PricelessAlaska.com, you have stories from women that have been impacted by your organization, Priceless. One girl said this: "The first night in prison was the first night of freedom I had experienced in years." Help us understand how this makes any sense. How could a girl see prison as freedom?
Well, again, this was a girl who found herself homeless as a teenager and was picked up by a trafficker. Her trafficker also had her run drugs. He was a vicious man who would beat her if she didn't do what he asked her to do. And this is another side note I want to throw in there, but I think sometimes we think of prostitution as selling sex, but because of the explosion through social media and through just the internet, now you can have every type of vile pornography, even in your handheld device. It has greatly increased the type of things that are for sale. So we're seeing more and more cases of what I would call human trafficking, human torture for sale, not just sex. So forget about what you think when you watch movies about this. It's not the real picture. But this woman was in one of those cases where things were way out of hand, being sold for some things that she had no control over, having to run drugs. And she got caught for running drugs and went to prison on behalf of her trafficker. Never saw a dime for any of the drug trafficking that she was doing. Anyway, she got in prison, and that night was the first night of safety she felt. Mm-hmm. She wasn't going to be beaten. Mm-hmm. She had food she could eat. That was freedom to her. And 3 years in prison, she had work experience. She was able to take classes. She wasn't dealing with all of the living in this chaotic world of looking over your shoulder all the time. She'll describe it as the best thing that ever happened to her. She actually found Christ in prison.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know what the right term is to call this, but what would you say, at what rate do you see girls return to the trafficking after they have been through Priceless?
I don't know that we have any statistics per se, but that also really, again, depends on the woman and how long has she been in it. What does her support network look like? You know, the more support you have, the less likely you are to return. And that's really the heart of Priceless, and getting them hooked up with those mentors as soon as possible. 'Cause so many of them are just longing for one healthy relationship in their life, one person who is going to be a support to them and not use them and abuse them at the end of the day. And coming through Priceless, they get at least 2 or 3 of them. So it is part of the recovery process. You know, a lot of women do end up going back for a time, but that's the great thing about Priceless is we never stop that relationship. We are always here. We always send text messages to love them and support them, and we are here to walk with them when they are really, truly ready to leave.
We have a term in the ministry that we use, we're waiting for her to hit her new rock bottom. You think they couldn't get any lower. Sometimes it does need to, and she knows if she chooses to go back when things get rough, she knows who to call, and often will. But one of the things that we now, after doing this for direct client work for a little over 18 months, we have seen in our own statistics the power of a really healthy mentoring team. When a girl engages, follows through, and sticks with her mentoring team, her chances are phenomenal, and much, much higher than when a girl is flaky in that relationship. So the difference between long-term success and keeping a girl out of the life is that mentoring team.
Absolutely.
I have to be very honest. We're sitting here with these list of questions that we want to ask you, but in listening to your hearts, it's hard for me to even focus on my questions. I just keep wanting to hear you talk more and more and more about your ministry. But I do have a couple more questions for you. Do you have a favorite story? Is there one girl that is just absolutely took your heart and you just can't let them go? And is there something can you share any of that with us?
It's hard to pick just one.
I can imagine.
My current favorite story, I'll share with you, and for the record, we will change their names for confidentiality, but I'll call her Diana. She's a girl that I've known for a few years, in working social service agencies in town, and I thought that I probably wouldn't hear from her again, and I started with Priceless, and a couple months ago I get a text message, and Diana has surfaced, and she's still alive and well, and she's found her way to Priceless, and she's pregnant right now. She's got a little baby due on the way, and this is a girl with just so much trauma. I know her from years back of drugs and physical abuse, sexual assaults, trafficking. But today she is so actively engaged with her mentors. It was really cute. They spent Valentine's Day together, and you saw on Facebook her mentor had posted this beautiful message about being able to spend Valentine's Day and talking about, Jesus as the one true love, and finding your worth through Jesus, and just how wonderful it was to sit with this young woman she's working with. And on the other side, within minutes, her mentee, Diana, posted about how much God has just truly blessed her life and changed her life. And, she did this little shout out to all her friends on Facebook about, you can change your life if you want to, and you just got to have faith and believe. She's starting a new job soon. She has this new light in her life. She's, found Christ and is just putting everything she has into him and trusting him. And it's just so amazing. You see all these women walking out of the most darkest situations that you could even imagine or dream of, have nightmares about, really, and just to see that light come into their life, and for them to smile and just be radiant and have the hope that they 2 years ago would have never had. So that's my current favorite story. She's just doing so well, and to celebrate with her and bring her flowers for a new job, and just see the love that she has for her mentors, it's beautiful.
I think my current favorite story is a young woman who, when she came into the Priceless program, she was a month away from delivering a baby, and she was homeless, and her trafficker had just been arrested, so she came into us through law enforcement, and for whatever reason had burned bridges with every shelter in town, couldn't get housing for her. And here she is a month away from giving birth to her 5th child, the previous 4 all taken away, and was not given the opportunity to raise them due to her lifestyle. And so we were able to get her into housing. Her mentors met with her sometimes 3 times a week, set up this cute little nursery for her, worked with OCS quite closely, and this is now, she's had the little baby home for a while and doing great, completely has turned her life around too, completely alcohol and drug free. And OCS just is finally at this place where they're closing the case and allowing her to keep this little girl. And they attributed that to the support system she has through Priceless.
Yeah.
Those are great stories. I know that we're coming to the end of the program, but I want to give you a chance to tell us what would be your top needs in Priceless and how are you funded?
Well, the top need we have in Priceless right now, which we are shamelessly begging everyone who's in earshot to pray with us about this, is we need housing. Alaska has a horrible shortage of beds, and there's not one designated bed for sex trafficking victims in the state. And they're a very different population, need a different kind of care, and there's only 400 sex trafficking designated beds in the whole country. Obviously none of them are here, but we really are asking God to provide housing. In terms of funding, we are privately funded. We do not receive any state or federal money because we don't want the regulations that come with that. We make no bones about the fact that we believe real life change happens in and through Jesus Christ, and our crazy church ladies are going to be sharing that message whenever and wherever they can, and we want to spend the money in the way that's going to basically give them the best shot at sharing that message. So we use we also don't want to have the money be regulated. If we need to buy a woman a plane ticket to get her back to a family of origin that's healthy in another state, we're going to do it. Whatever it takes, we're going to spend our money on facials if we need to. Whatever it takes to build that trusting, loving relationship between the mentors and her, and get her in the best place possible. So we are privately funded. You can also go on Priceless Alaska and donate to us. We love you for every dollar that you send in, but we love you even more if you would jump on board with us in a monthly commitment, because then that gives us a little bit more predictability around what's coming in. So yes, we're privately funded. Every dollar matters, and that is a big need of ours too, and that's going to be a critical need as we move into getting housing.
And I'll just add, I saw an awesome hoodie for sale on your guys' website. Yes. So tell us just quickly about that. What's the company you guys partnered with to provide that hoodie?
Alaska Chicks. They're awesome, and they designed that hoodie especially for Priceless, and they give that to us at a great discount, so we get a decent little profit off of each one of those sweatshirts.
Very good. Definitely worth the visit to the website of pricelessalaska.com to check that out, as well as all of the other information. And I see another ministry being born out of this, crazychurchladies.com. So we'll talk about that next time. We do want to thank you ladies so much, Gwen, Stephanie, and Donna, for joining us once again today. And I imagine we'll be checking in with you guys and your organization throughout the next year, and just seeing what you guys are doing and continue to get information and bring awareness to human trafficking right here in our neighborhood, the state of Alaska. Thank you for joining us here on Living Well. And you can find us here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. on KATB 89.3 in Anchorage, KJLP 88.9 in Palmer, as well as you can catch us online at katb.org. Thank you.
Thank you.